Hi guys, it's Karen from A Yarn Tale. I'm coming to you from Chicago, where I live with my husband, our 3 kids, and our dog Max. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as knotfancyknitter. That's K-N-O-T Fancy Knitter. There is a Ravelry group for this podcast, so if you want to pop on over there and say hello, you can do that. If you'd rather DM me on Instagram, that's fine too. And there is an email for this podcast, which is ayarntale@gmail.com. So if you want to say hello, please do. I love to hear from you guys and what you're working on and what you think. So this is a knitting podcast. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much. It's been really nice to get to know some people in the comments and recognize faces or profile pictures or however you want to say it. So it's been about 2 weeks since I last podcasted. The weather has definitely turned here. It is cold in Chicago. For those of you following along at home, I do have heat in my whole house, not just upstairs. So our lives have greatly improved, which is great because it's in the low 30s today and it's supposed to snow, which I'm not too jazzed about, but I don't think it'll stick for a bit. So I guess it's all right. So let's get right into it. I have one finished object. It is the winter cable hat by Annanitato Lolo, and I just realized I forgot to blow dry my pom-pom so it would look good on the podcast, but you'll have to imagine that I have fluffed it up because the hairdryer really does amazing things for pom-poms. So this was a kit that I bought for the Chicago Yarn Crawl this past summer. I bought it at Yarnify, which is an amazing yarn store that I don't go to enough because it is just slightly further than some of the other yarn stores in town. But they have really nice hand-dyed yarn and also a really extensive collection of non-hand-dyed yarn. So if you just want to kind of make something and not break the bank, it is possible. I bought yarn there for Max's dog sweater because I just can't buy hand-dyed yarn for a dog sweater. So this was a kit that I bought at Yarnify. It is yarn by 3 Irish girls. And so let's see if I can remember. This is their worsted in the colorway Sherry Amore. There's this beautiful pink speckly color. And then there was, it was held double with a strand of mohair, also by 3 Irish girls in the colorway Natural, which was like this really creamy white color. So together they make this beautiful squishy fabric, and I knit up the pattern that was recommended in the kit, which was the winter cable hat by Annanitato Lolo. And I love it. I love it. I have to say, the pattern got kind of panned on Ravelry, and I talked a little bit about this in the last episode, but there were a lot of people that didn't like the gauge, they didn't like the decreases, they didn't like I don't know, there were a lot of haters for this pattern, but I really love it. I will say my gauge is super tight. That is not the pattern's fault. I did not swatch because I don't swatch for hats. And I just kind of went up a needle size from whatever was recommended, and it still was super tight. So this is really dense. It won't stand up because it has the pom-pom, but it is not at all drapey. But I like that because Chicago is freezing, and the warmer the better. Really, the denser the better for a hat. So it was kind of a pain to knit. I mean, it was, after a while, it would kind of be uncomfortable on my hands, but I just didn't rush and I took my time on it. And I think it turned out great. Full disclosure, I did not do the decreases the way that the pattern recommended. I don't even know why that was. At the end of the last podcast, I was right about here, and I remember, or maybe I was further up. I said, oh, I'm just about at the decreases, and I looked and I was literally at the row where you have to start the decreases. And I read the decreases for the pattern, and they seemed kind of long, and I sort of liked where the hat was as far as length. So I didn't want to do, 20 rows of decreases and straight knitting and all that stuff just to finish the hat. I was kind of over it. So I just did a bunch of knit 2 togethers. I don't even remember what I did. I didn't do any more cables. So I just, like at the top there, it's pretty much just cinched together. I just did, I divided it. I did the math wrong. I counted up my stitches and I was like, oh, I'll just do like knit 9 and then knit the next 2 together, and then I'll do, you know, knit 8 or knit 7 and then knit the next 2 together for the next round. But my math didn't come out right. When I got to the end of the round, I had a bunch of extra stitches. So I was like, shoot, I didn't do that right. So I just did a bunch of knit 2 togethers just to kind of call it a day, and got it down to, I think, 8 stitches or 10 stitches or some kind of small amount. Ran my yarn through there with the tapestry needle and just cinched it up, and like, voila, hat. It is not going to win awards for crown decreases. This is why I'm not a pattern designer. But I still think it looks really good. I have been wearing it pretty much nonstop because, like I said, the weather has turned, and it is really cute. The pom-pom is over the top. It's huge. It's like the size of my head, which I have conflicting feelings about. At the moment, I really like it. Some days I feel a little bit ridiculous, but you know, you got to take your joy where you can get it in the colder months. So this is the Winter Cable Hat by Annanitato Lolo. I love it. Yeah, I think it was great. It was a kit well worth buying. So that is finished object number 1 and done. I have no more finished objects. And you might be saying, but isn't shawlography over? Weren't you almost done? Yes, it is. And yes, I was. But I did not finish the Stephen West Shawlography MKAL just yet. I might as well just show it to you. I was gonna wait till the end, but since I brought it up, I'll show it to you. I'm not gonna go through all my yarns because I've gone through them a couple times, and I kind of feel like if you really wanna know, just message me or let me know, or go back to the previous video, or however you wanna do it. Oh man, this is a jumble. Okay, so oh my goodness. You are kidding me. I'm in the middle of a row. It is the tiniest row, you guys, and I am in the middle of it. Okay, well, I'm not finishing it because it's so tiny. I don't think it'll make a difference. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I will finish it. Hang on, pause. This is my shawlography so far. I am almost done. I'm gonna finish. I just kind of lost steam at the end. So I know you've seen this 1,000 times if you watch knitting podcasts, so I'll go pretty quickly. But this is where I'm at. I'm doing the stripy border part at the bottom, and I got pretty much, I'd say almost 2/3 of the way done. And then every time I think like, oh, I'm almost done, then I look and I'm like, nope, I have all of this to do. Because each one of these little crisscross stitches, each one of these little white crisscrossies is its own stripe. So I don't know how many stripes I've got, but it's a lot. This is the back. It's a lot. It's a lot. But I do think I could probably knock it out this weekend if I just sit down and do it. My son has a swim meet, so I'm going to be sitting around waiting for him to race. Because the thing about swim meets is you sit there for hours and hours, and then the race literally takes 90 seconds. And then you have to wait 2 more hours for the next 90-second race. So there's a lot of hurry up and wait. So I think I can knock this out this weekend if I have some dedicated sitting around time. So here are my thoughts. I am really glad that I participated in this Stephen West MKAL. I had never done one before. I had only knit one pattern of Stephen's, and it was what was it? It was the dotted rays that I knit for my mom, and I really enjoyed knitting that, and I kind of just wanted to try it out. So I thought it was really fun. I love the mystery aspect of it. I really liked kind of having a mini deadline that I could work towards, and there were all these other people that were knitting the same thing, and it was really fun to be sort of part of that group and see what everybody else's colors were and see if I could do it. And I think it turned out great. I mean, I know it's not done, but I think it was really fun to make, right? I mean, this is just really wild. I mean, even if my colors weren't, Bananarama, it was still pretty wild texture-wise, and there were a lot of new things that I had never tried before. So that was really, really fun. That said, this shawl is crazy. I mean, this is definitely not something I would pick to knit myself. If I were scrolling through, I'm much more like, you know, monochromatic or gray or just really sort of low key. And I don't make a lot of shawls to begin with, so this is way outside of my comfort zone. So I'm not sure how much wear I'm gonna get out of it. I don't know. I mean, we're gonna see. I do feel like it is such a statement piece that whenever you wear it, I mean, people are gonna notice. Maybe it's just because mine is so bright color-wise, but I feel like even if you knit it in black and white or like a whole bunch of grays, you'd still notice it. It's just really interesting as far as an accessory. So I don't know how much it's not like an everyday piece, regardless of the color palette that you choose. So I don't know. In that sense, is it gonna be my favorite shawl? Like, I only have one other shawl or two other shawls, and I'm already gonna say like, no, no, it is not gonna be my favorite shawl, but I'm really glad that I did it. And I do think I'll probably end up doing it again just because it was just really fun to be a part of that type of an experience. So, and I did learn some new stitches, and I will say it did show me that I am capable of knitting a larger piece in a shorter period of time. I always kind of view myself as a slow knitter, which I still think I am in the grand scheme of the spectrum of knitters. I mean, some of those Norwegian ladies are just like lightning fast. So I'm on the slower end, but it did show me that it is possible for me to sort of power through a larger piece, and it doesn't have to take me 8 months to do something bigger like that. So that's, I mean, I think that's valuable. So that is my shawlography. I did not weave in any ends at all. Did I do the weave in Steven? No, I didn't. Was it a mistake? Yes, it was. So I'm a little bit dreading that as well, because if you haven't noticed, there's conservatively 433 ends in this thing. There's so many ends. They're all over the place. And I mean, that's not even including the fringy border ends that I've got going on here. Okay, so the only thing I have remaining to do is to knit more of the stripy border. So just in case you forgot, which I think is kind of humanly impossible at this point, you're just striping through all the 5 colors all the way around the border. And binding off as you go. And actually, now that I say that, it reminds me that when I first started doing the border, the first 3 stripes, the first 3 stripes are different than the rest. There's kind of this mitered corner aspect of it, because in order to get the correct edge, you have to somehow you have to create some more knitting over here. So there's a little bit of a mitered edge, and that's all written on the pattern. And okay, what is that brown stripe? That is in the pattern. Why? Why? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter, but why? Why? It should be pink. But anyway, I'm doing the border, and I did the green, and I did the pink the way it's written down, and I did the brown. And then I'm pretty much on the white stripe here, which was like where it starts to get pretty mindless because you're just doing garter back and forth and picking up stitches and binding off. So I'm going along and I'm watching some podcasts, and I actually was watching Martin from Knit 365 because he did a whole Vlogtober series on his MKAL, and he sort of went through vlog style as he was knitting it. And so it was really fun to sort of follow along and watch his podcast while I was knitting shawlography. So if you haven't checked out Martin, I would highly recommend it because he's a cool guy anyway, even when it's not MKAL season. But so I'm watching Martin, and he's like, yeah, the great thing about this is you're binding off as you go. So at the end, you don't have a giant I-cord border going all the way around. And I was like, yeah, I thought of that the last podcast episode, and I said something similar, but wait a minute, I'm binding off as I go. When am I binding off? And I looked at my knitting and I realized I actually wasn't binding off. I was just knitting my stripes longer and longer and longer. Like my shawl was making basically a right angle. So my stripes were like short down here, but then my brown one was a little bit longer and my white one was starting to be even longer. So I was like, oh my God, thank God I realized it. I basically just pulled out a couple of stripes and then realized I was supposed to bind off a stitch as I went along each row. Duh. Oops. So good thing Martin said it out loud and it clicked in my head, because otherwise, can you imagine if I had ended up with like 80 stitches on the needles and my stripes were like, it would have been so sad. So I fixed it. I ripped out my stripes and got back on track and bound off as I went. And so now my number of stitches is remaining constant. I think it's like 33 or 34 or 35 or in the 30s somewhere is each stripe. So that is good. I will say, for being mindless knitting, I mean, it's just garter back and forth. I have had a ridiculously hard time keeping on track. I think I just feel like it's supposed to be easy, so I'm super not paying attention to it. So every time I look down, I'm like, oh no, my stitch count is off. Oh no, I forgot to pick up that stitch. I forgot to bind off. I forgot, one time I dropped, I guess, the last stitch of the I-cord, so it was slowly unraveling on the edge. What? So no worries. I got over there, I picked it up. It was just garter, so I can ladder up and it was fine. But like, what am I even doing? Apparently I cannot go totally on autopilot because my knitting just turns into a complete disaster. But it's moving along. I have probably, I mean, I'm slow, so I have a few hours, several hours of knitting left just to knock that one out, and then probably 5 days of weaving and ends. Then I can block it and be done with it. So it's happening. Hopefully by the next podcast, I will actually go back and just knock it out. I think I was just so excited that there was no more deadline, that I could work on whatever project I wanted, that I just didn't touch it. I was like, it's done now. I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so I got my hat, I got my shawlography, blah, 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 blah. Okay, my next work in progress, and it's really my last work in progress, you guys. This is a really slow knitting time because I've just become kind of obsessed with this project. My last work in progress is the Void Shawl by Melanie Berg. I'm just gonna show this bit by bit. It is a long and skinny shawl, more of like a scarfy type shawl, with this beautiful textured pattern. So last time, I threw a stitch marker in there. There it is. Last time I was here, I had just done, hang on, having a hard time. You start at the tip, so I had just done up to here. And I've pretty much worked on this almost exclusively. And I am down to, I have 2 more repeats. So that means basically a full diamond. So like, here's one repeat, here's another. Because by the magic of increases, the diamonds offset, the stitch pattern offsets exactly halfway through a repeat, or after each repeat. Yeah. So you're doing the same pattern, but it magically offsets. So I love that. Okay, I cannot recommend this pattern enough. It is incredibly engaging, and it's not too hard, and it's easy to follow, and it's easy to read your knitting, because I was worried it would be like lace, where once I get going with a bunch of yarn overs and knit 2 togethers and like complicated back and forth lace patterns, I cannot read my knitting. I don't know, when the yarn gets really fine, I can't see how the stitches work together, and I get off, even if I throw in a bunch of stitch markers, and it's just incredibly frustrating and demoralizing. So I was worried that this type of pattern would be kind of the same thing, but it is not at all. So I am knitting this out of Woolfolk Far, which is 100% merino. It's worsted weight. So the yarn is lovely. It's very kind of fuzzy and fluffy, and it's definitely not too thin. If anything, there's a lot of air in there. So if anything, it's like sort of extra floofy, which I believe is the technical term for it. And it looks like cables, but it's not cables. It's actually just twisted stitches, which I had never even heard of before. But that has been nice to learn a new stitch, and I definitely have it down now because you do them all the time. It's knits and purls, and then twisting stitches left and twisting stitches right. So you don't need a cable needle. You just sort of follow this pattern. And I have messed it up a bunch, but it's easy to spot your mistakes because the pattern is just really obvious. So the only time I had to actually rip back and fix anything was I noticed at one point, it's not here anymore because I fixed it. I noticed at one point at the edge, I must have just started the stitch pattern wrong because at the very tip, it's sort of hard to tell where you are in the pattern. It's hard for me to tell anyway. So I had twisted my stitches the wrong direction for probably 5 or 6 of these triangles. So there was this really wonky, like it's supposed to be going like this. And there's this one little part that's like, whoop, for 5 or 6 diamonds in a row. And it was just really irritating to me. And so I ultimately took the needle out, ripped back, and then just fixed it. Because I tried to drop down, but I couldn't figure out how to fix the twisted stitch just by laddering down. So I've watched videos about how to fix cables that are crossed in the wrong direction, you know, where you hold it to the front when it's supposed to be to the back or vice versa. And that makes sense in my brain. And I do feel like I've never attempted to do that fix, but I feel like I could make it happen because I understand how the stitches are supposed to work together. But for these twisted stitches, like it is voodoo magic. The stitches, like I laddered down there and it looked like the loops were like twisted in on each other and they like came out through each other. I was like, what? So I had my crochet hook and I was all ready to get really technical, you know, get in there in the nitty gritty and like fix it. But it was beyond me. I couldn't do it. I made a giant mess of it because I figured worst case scenario, I'll just rip back. And I couldn't. I thought I had it fixed 2 or 3 times, but as it turns out, it was just like yet further messed up. So I ended up just ripping back. It was only a few rows. I think it was like 2 or 3 rows to get down to where I'd screwed it up. And then just knit back up. It was no big deal. I do feel like if I were a better knitter, I would have been able to just pop down and fix that. I don't think it would have been a difficult fix, but it was sort of beyond my ability level. Anyway, now I just check my knitting a little more often because the rows are getting pretty long now. I mean, I think it ends up at like 400 something stitches. So it's not like, remember when I knit that Hisho shawl by Olga Baraya Kefalian and there were 800 stitches on the needle? It's not like that. It's about half that. So, but it still is a long way to go across a row. So I do check my knitting pretty frequently just to make sure that the triangles and the diamonds look good. Everything's going in the right direction and then like carry on. So I have basically 2 more repeats of the pattern. So that's basically from here to here would be 2 repeats, 1 and 2. And then it's just a garter border for I think 10 ridges, which just sounds dreamy. This yarn is so nice and you know, I'll knit garter forever. This is supposed to be a gift for my mother-in-law. She doesn't watch this podcast, so it's okay. So hopefully she'll like it. I was worried when I started it that I wouldn't be able to complete a whole shawl before Christmas, along with all the other things I want to do. But it's actually going really fast and I've really been enjoying working on it. So pretty sure I'll be able to get that done in the next couple of weeks, actually. Famous last words, but it's definitely attainable by Christmas. So that'll be good. This is the Void Shawl by Melanie Berg. Highly recommend. There was one more thing I wanted to say about that pattern. So the pattern actually says that if you want your edge, so not the edge that the cable's in, but the edge of the shawl here to be looser and more comfortable on your neck, you can do an extra yarn over before the last stitch and then just drop it when you come to it on the next row. And all of the comments on Ravelry basically said that that yarn over step was essential because otherwise it came out way too tight and it was kind of curling this way on people, which made it really hard to wear. And even you can see mine is still tight. I have done the yarn over, the extra yarn over trick all the way along and it still is kind of tight. It's not gonna bother me. Like I said, I think I would imagine that this type of a piece would be worn primarily as a scarf. So if one side's tighter than the other, like whatever. But just so you know, if you end up knitting this, definitely do the yarn over. And some people even did 2 yarn overs and then dropped them both before the first stitch of the row or before the last stitch of the row. Yeah, you put the yarn overs in before the last stitch of the row and then you drop them when you come to them at the beginning of the row. And at the time I was reading it before I started and I was like, well, that seems like a lot. I'm not going to do 2 because some people said they were optional. But now I kind of wish I had done 2 because it would have just given it a little bit more give or stretch in there. Like that's about as tight as it'll go. And as you can see, it still has a lot of stretch in the top. So it's going to kind of limit how I block this out. Not that I'm going to need it to be longer. It's going to be pretty long enough as it is. But in any case, if you knit this, definitely put the yarn overs in because they do help. And it's not hard to do. Okay. So we are in the middle of the 2021 gift make-along that I'm hosting along with Amanda over at Southern Knits in the Mitt. And I have gotten some prizes, which is really exciting. This make-along started on October 1st and it runs through December 1st, so we have a few more weeks. So if you feel like knocking out a hat or a pair of socks or some fingerless mitts or whatever else you feel like making for someone, if you call it a gift, either for someone else or a special gift for yourself, then it qualifies for the make-along. As long as it was less than 50% done before October 1st, pop on over to the Ravelry group for this podcast or for Amanda's Ravelry group for Southern Knits in the Mitt podcast, which I will link down below, and put it in the FO thread. You can put it in my FO thread, you can put it in her FO thread, you can put it in both FO threads. There's an Instagram hashtag, which is 2021 gift mail, and I've been following that. It's so nice to see everyone's beautiful finished objects. I think there's lots of people who are really gonna enjoy their gifts. If you're looking for ideas for things to knit pretty fast, if you're feeling the Christmas stress or end of the year holiday crunch time, take a look through the FO thread because there are some really good ideas in there. But I got some prizes. So Amanda got some prizes and I got one prize. I'm gonna get another prize next week. So there'll be a few for each thread. But the prize that I picked up last week is yarn from Creo. This is called Party Powder. It is, hang on, let me look. It's on their baby feet sock. It is 75% superwash merino, 15% nylon, and 10% tencel, 433 yards for 100 grams. And you guys, it is beautiful. It's this beautiful creamy base with just like the faintest of pink and blue speckles. Pink and blue. Yeah, and a little bit of red. Not too crazy because I still am kind of on the fence with speckled yarns and variegated yarns and really anything too crazy. But I think this is beautiful. It would be great for socks. It would be great for, throwing in that shawl that you don't know what to do with it. So this is one prize. And I also got some stitch markers to go along with it. These are, oh my goodness, how am I gonna say that? a.k.a. fiber. I'm gonna show you so you can read it. Okay, these stitch markers are the cutest. And I almost kept them for myself, but I was like, no, Karen, you brought them for prizes. They're cute little tassels on a lucking stitch marker. So there's some that are more blue. There's some that are more pink. My camera, it's an iPhone, you guys. A better camera setup is definitely on my Christmas list, so we'll see what happens. Oh my goodness. But they're so cute. There's a whole tin of all these little tassels to just bring a little bit of fun to your knitting. And there's tons of them in here. And then you get the little tin. So that is a prize. If you're up for prizes, put your FOs in the Ravelry group and the Instagram thread. Speaking of a better camera setup, there was the nicest commenter who was like, hey, would you mind moving your camera up because your angle's really weird and I feel like I can't see you. I'm like, that's so helpful. So if there are other kind and thoughtful criticisms about the technical aspect of this podcast, please, please, please let me know. If you'd be more comfortable DMing me on Instagram or emailing me, like anonymously emailing me at the podcast email, that's great too. It's a little bit amateur hour over here, so I welcome any and all thoughtful feedback because as you can tell, we clearly need help. So I tried to raise it up this time and make it level, but if I didn't succeed in that endeavor, please let me know because I'll keep working on it. Thank you. Okay. The only other thing I really want to talk about is I am working on some gift knits, obviously the shawl for my mother-in-law, but I also have some more hats I want to knock out. And I have some hats that I want to make for guys, either for my husband or my dad or my brother or whoever. And I was struggling to find patterns that I really like the look of. So I thought I'd sort of compile my top, I think there's 4 on here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. My top 4 that I was considering, and then sort of throw it out to you guys. If there's hats that you use, like go-to hats for you for hats for men, please let me know because it is so hard. Even if you search on Ravelry and you limit it for male appropriate patterns. I mean, not that there's male appropriate patterns, like any pattern can work for any person and any color can work for any person, and I get it, like gender is a construct. Yeah, I get it. But if I'm choosing a hat for my dad, like there are some things he's gonna look for. So the hats that I am considering are, of course, the Musselburgh. I knit one of those already, but I pretty much gave it to my husband, so I can't really take it back. So I'd be like, oh no, yeah, I know you didn't wear it yet, so it's not really yours. So we don't have that anymore. But let me grab it. This is the one that I knit for my husband, so it is way too big. This is the adult large. I want to say there's even an extra large. So it's too big for me. I knit it out of the Purl Soho Posy yarn. I forget the fabric construction for that, but there is some cashmere in there. Not entirely, it's just a little bit. In the colorway Black Cherry. I love the color. I love that it's single color. I love, it's been stuffed in a bag, so it looks really crap right now. I will block it properly so that when he goes to wear it, it's not gonna look all janky. But this hat is great. I feel like it's good for anyone. Women, men, kids, whomever. It works with fingering weight yarn all the way up through worsted, I believe. This is a fingering, and I actually love the look of the fingering weight hats, Musselburghs the most. So if I were gonna knit it again, I would knit it in fingering, which is actually one of the reasons that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to do that because it's a lot of knitting. But it looks amazing. So I just made. So there's the Musselburgh by Isolde Teague. My next choice of hat is it's a free pattern by Purl Soho called the Classic Ribbed Hat. This is also a really basic ribbed beanie. I feel like it would work pretty much for anyone. It doesn't look that bad. You can make it as slouchy as you want or kind of a tighter fit hat. My next pick is the Oslo Hat by PetiteKnit. This is also knit in, I believe it's fingering and mohair, which I'm like, I don't really want to knit a mohair hat in this instance, although I do love the mohair that's in my winter cable hat. I'm kind of looking for more just a straight beanie. So I like that this is plain. I like that it is really kind of versatile, like the Musselburgh, in that it would kind of go with anyone's stuff. It's not too trendy, but it also looks like a lot of knitting. So I don't know, maybe I need to get rolling on this if I'm gonna knock out one of these before the holidays. But my last pick is a hat that was recommended by Aquila over at the Lefty Knitter podcast. So I don't know if you watched that one. Hers is more of a vlog style podcast, really fun, really cute. And she gets up to all sorts of crafty pursuits. So I do like to see what Aquila is doing these days. But she knits a hat called the photographer hat all the time. So she's working on one now, and I know she's knit a bunch of them in the past, and they all kind of turned out great. So that is a contender. It's a ribbed hat. I haven't looked too much into it, but it's pretty slouchy. So maybe if you fold the brim over, it wouldn't be that slouchy. I'm not really looking for that slouchy of a hat because most of the guys in my family probably wouldn't go for that. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up. Maybe they would love it. But I was kind of looking for just a more classic fit. So maybe if I folded over the brim, the photographer hat would work. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at that. The problem is the pattern pictures that I really like of it are in black yarn, which, again, knit in black yarn. I need to get a better light, or I don't think I could do it. So I have to decide if it's something I would like in another colorway, or if I just am really attracted to that pattern picture. But if you have patterns for hats for guys that you return to or you've knit and they've been successful, please let me know, because I gotta get rolling and I need some ideas. So that's kind of it. I don't really have any more knitting. I'm hoping to have a more diverse array of projects next week. I really miss knitting sweaters. It's been a long time since I knit a garment, and that's kind of my favorite as far as knitting projects go. So I'm gonna either cast something on or dig out my Schneeflocken colorwork yoke pullover and see if I can get that rolling again, because it is the season for sweaters and I gotta have one at least on the go. I hope you're doing well. I hope that your crafty plans are treating you well and you're being successful. If it's not working out, it's totally fine. It's gonna be okay, just rip it out. No one will know. Doesn't matter, it's just yarn. I hope you're doing well. I hope things are going great. I hope you are safe and happy and healthy, and you have a lot of exciting things to look forward to. So I'll talk to you soon. Happy knitting. It's 75, 25, no, 75 super wet.